Hello. If you're a woman going through divorce, then you need to listen to this particular interview. Today, we are talking about the impact of selling the family home firsthand. And I know it's going to be insightful. It's going to challenge your views, and it's a must listen. So I'm Kerry Griffiths. This is the Willow Brook Lifestyle Financial Planning YouTube channel. And today I'm joined by an amazing guest. It's Jill Gulotta. Welcome. How are you?
Good, thank you. I'm so excited to be here, and thank you for having me.
You are just absolutely welcome. I'm delighted that you're here. So for those who don't know, Jill is a divorce coach and a registered dietitian, and she coaches women through divorce in the healthiest, happiest way possible. And she works with them to rebuild their confidence and reclaim their independence. And you talk a lot about post-divorce life and kind of how things are going to look there as well. So Jill, you're really quite unique in this kind of dietitian coach kind of background side of things. Do you want to tell us a bit more about how you help clients repair their emotional and their physical health and kind of what that all looks like?
Yeah. So I actually started, I was a registered dietitian in my own private practice. So, what I was seeing in my professional life and my personal life when I was going through divorce, the impact of that emotional transition on your health. And so I know I felt very alone in my own divorce process. And I was like, it was like a big aha moment. Like, I want to help women with all of this, the transitioning through the divorce journey, making sure they're taking care of themselves when they're doing it. So I have a program that it's really like a formulated step by step. And part of that process is, really taking a realistic look at your marriage. I think sometimes we really hold on to this fantasy that we create, or we're holding on to the loss of what we thought it was going to be versus what it actually was. So I think it's really important to have a very realistic look at what your marriage really was, to make sure you're not getting stuck in this fantasy
tale.
Yeah, because I did that too. There was a lot of damage in my marriage, and when I left it and I was grieving it, I was grieving something that wasn't actually true. I was grieving what I wished it could have been, not what it was. So I think it's very important to really take a realistic look at what your marriage looked like, and in order to help you start to move forward. There's a heavy focus obviously on self-care and making sure you're, I know a lot of women stop eating. I wasn't eating when I was going through my divorce. So making sure people are eating and sleeping and managing their stress, and then really starting to help women connect with themselves again. I think you get very lost. One, you're coming out of this identity as a couple and a unit, and now you're on your own. And so it's like reestablishing your identity and reconnecting with who you are and what you're about. And so those are part of the steps of the process that I go through with women, and then helping them start to create this life post-divorce, because it can be and is amazing. It can be amazing. Divorce isn't the end of your life. It's someone said this. I was on a talk yesterday, and the woman said it's a pivot. And I love that she said that. That's so true. It's a pivot.
Reset button, I say. It's a reset button, a chance to pause and to reassess. But one of the things that I really love about you, Jill, and for those who don't follow Jill on Instagram, it's like a must do. You must follow Jill, because you talk about this positivity. You talk about post-divorce life, your post-divorce life. You help people imagine what it's going to be like, and kind of give them like real evidence of, you know what? It's not the end of the world. It's the start of something great. So if you're not following Jill, go and find her, and I'll put your links in the YouTube commentary as well. So one of the posts that really inspired me and that I wanted to pick up on today was the one all around when you sold your house and how it been a much bigger deal than you expected. And it just blew my mind. And I knew the women I work with needed to hear this. Like, I was like, this is it. Like, I'm telling them third hand, but they need to hear it from you, Jill, because I read your words, and you are a brilliant writer. And I read your words and I was like, yes, there's the essence. That's what I want my audience to hear. And this is what I want all the women going through this to appreciate and understand. So can we start there? Tell us a little bit about that post and kind of that journey and what you shared in that post.
It's so funny because I know, like, we've had our mishaps with our timing and when we were going to connect on this. And interestingly enough, today is my closing day on my house.
Meant to be.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And I have very good advice for your audience in regards to selling your home. So the matrimonial home is tough, right? It's where it's where your kids are being raised. It's where they may have been born. It's this, life and unit you thought you'd have, and where do you have all these memories? And I know for me, when we first got separated, it was hard to let go of the house. So we stayed in the house and just switched off nights, because that felt really big. Like to move out of that house really felt, there was a finality to it. There was a heaviness to it. And I remember when we moved out of it, I have this vivid memory of my older son dancing around and packing up his suitcase, having no kind of idea the magnitude of what we were doing. And so for me, the best decision financially was to rent the house out. So I got the house in the divorce.
Yeah.
So I decided to rent the home out just to get some rental income. So I had been doing that for the past 5 years, which was really helpful. And then, just this past March, my tenant was going to be moving out. And so I think I was renting it to him for 4 or 5 years. So I still had the home, but there was distance from it because I wasn't living in it.
Yes.
But I still had it. And something about still having it, I don't know if it was a safety net, but it was like I had it at arm's length, but I still had it there. And so my original plan was to continue renting it.
Yeah.
And my realtor is like, have you ever considered selling it? The market's really great. And it just so happened that worked out best. And, I had stopped by the house over the course of the years that the tenant was living there. And it didn't feel like my home because all of their stuff was in it. So it didn't feel heavy or hard or weird to be there. But the day that I went, and I think this is what I wrote my post about, when it was all empty,
yeah,
and I was getting it ready to, be put on the market, I stood there and there was like dual emotions. There was like a little bit of heaviness and sadness because now it looked like my home with all the tenants' stuff out of it. It just flooded with memories because now there was a resemblance of where I lived.
Yeah.
And it was just, I was standing there in this empty home, and actually my sons were in the backyard playing. And it was just this sense of like a little bit of sadness, but also way more excitement. It was like way more excitement because it was like, okay, this is where we live, but this is not where my story ends.
Yes.
And to selling this just felt like another big closure to this process and to my divorce, and another like cutting the string and like moving forward. So while I was feeling like, wow, this is bizarre, I'm standing in my marital home and I'm about to sell it, but it felt exciting at the same time. It was just like, here I am, I'm doing it, I'm continuing to move forward, and here's this other big piece of my story with my divorce that I'm closing the door on. And it's just like more of a testament of what I'm doing for my life with my kids moving forward. So it's really exciting. And I know it's a hard one. I know selling the marital home or leaving the marital home is a very challenging thing, but it's also, it's exciting to think about, the steps that you're taking to continue to move forward and build your life after your divorce.
And what I loved in that story, loads of things for us to unpack there. What I really loved is the unexpected feelings. Like you talked about how unexpected it was to actually see the positivity in that moment. And that's I kind of think a really important thing to share with women. You kind of that realization that when you were sitting there and standing, looking around you, realizing actually I'm moving forward and I'm closing the door on that chapter of my life. That's done and I'm moving forward. And that's kind of a lot of what you shared, Jill, isn't it? Kind of that stage of kind of moving piece by piece into the next steps. So Jill, tell me a little bit about kind of, it is, and it can feel really impossible to think that's going to happen. So if you could go back, Jill, and kind of talk to Jill before the divorce was finalized, what advice would you have given her about the house? What would you want her to have known?
One of the big things I would have said is it's not about the house, it's about the home. Because the thought of moving out of the marital home and like into an apartment with my kids was devastating.
Yeah.
And we have never been happier. It's like where we are and where we're happy, which is what makes your home. And so don't feel nervous about what that's going to look like because you're leaving this house. Because if you really think about it, and it's just a house, it really is. And it does, I know it doesn't feel that way at the time, but I would say that to myself going back, it is just a house. You can move anywhere with your kids and create the most amazing home
You really
ever.
can. You really can. And I think what you talked about at the very beginning is really important to bring up here. So how we remember the fairy tale, we remember kind of what it was meant to be. But the chances are that this house has seen quite a lot of upset
Mm-hmm.
as the marriage has unraveled. And actually a new and fresh, happy start with your children, building new memories. That's a positive journey.
So positive, so positive. And that's, I'm glad you said that, because that's actually something I was thinking about when it's like, it's just a home and you have to think about what happened in that home. Just because you were married and had your kids there, was it a happy home? Were you happy in that house? Probably saw a lot of toxic things. And so it's interesting because I was going to possibly rent the house to my sister when I was still thinking about renting it and not selling it. And she herself was like, there's bad karma there. She's like, I don't think I want to move in there. And I'm like, I totally get it. Like, I wouldn't want, even my parents are like, why don't you move back? Why don't you move back in? I'm like, I don't think I want to be in that house. And so it's interesting. I was surprised that I was so excited to be selling it, because my intention was to keep holding on to it and renting. And I didn't realize the impact it was having on me to still be the owner of that house and renting it. And this feels like such a breakthrough and like excitement and just ready to close that chapter. And it's really, really exciting.
That last high is gone, isn't it? It's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
that last high is gone, which is fantastic. Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah, it's exciting. Really exciting.
So that's what I wanted to share today. And I knew it was going to be super short because we're just going to get this message out there so that women listening, watching, whichever format they're going to kind of access this in, can just get those few minutes of understanding from the other side. Just before we finish off there, I just kind of want to just position with women who are listening that there is some work you can do to understand the financial implications of whether you stay in the home and whether you rent it out, whether you keep the pension, etc. And it's really important that you do that before you make any decisions, because this work around understanding the emotional tie to this, and is that really the reality, you know, what you're remembering in that house really, and the work to do around kind of really picturing a fantastic future in a new place also needs to be tied alongside the financial side of things and kind of what logistically is going to work.
I agree, because I think if you have the emotional piece kind of intact, you can look at the financial piece just like as logistics, right? If we have an emotional tie to the house and the financial piece is not making sense to stay in or to keep it, you might not see that clearly when you feel so emotionally tied to it. So I think it's important to have the emotional piece like intact while you're trying to make these financial decisions with the house. I do want to say one thing for your listeners, because this was a massive, massive learning lesson for me. And this is the first place I'm sharing it, because I'm closing today. So I kind of feel like, okay, to like put this out there. I got my house in my divorce. And unfortunately, my lawyers dropped the ball with transferring the deed to my name.
Okay.
At the end of the divorce, at the closing of the agreement. And so when I went to sell my house and, my lawyer, the real estate lawyer is doing all the paperwork, there's all these judgments against my ex-husband for
Wow.
debt that I am now responsible for in order to close my home. So I had zero idea the implication of his name still being on the debt. It should have been done at the end of the divorce, like same day, transfer the deed, or I should have been advised to do it myself. So anybody listening, if you are awarded your home in your divorce agreement, be sure that the deed gets transferred ASAP to your name, because despite what your divorce agreement says, because my divorce says the house is mine and I'm not responsible for any of his debt. However, on paper, he still owns this asset. So collection agencies can go after him. So anybody listening, make sure if the home is awarded to you, that you get the deed transferred to your name only.
Yeah, spot on. And that's the same in the UK. So for my UK listeners as well, that's absolutely the same in the UK. So really important step to take. And Jill, good luck. I will catch up with you once we finish the recording and have a quick chat about that as well then. Thank you. You've been an amazing guest. I'm going to pop all of Jill's links below. Definitely follow her on Instagram. It's a little bit of light in your box to kind of find out a little bit about what post-divorce life looks like. Thank you, Jill. I'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.